My name is Becky West. I have 5 kids. My oldest and my youngest both have Down syndrome. And I heard about Practice Without Pressure at a committee meeting at the MAC before it was before it was
Born
built.
works, yeah.
And I was sitting in this meeting and they mentioned there's this woman in Delaware who has this methodology to help people with disabilities participate in care without restraint. And to be honest with you, I had been sort of fading off at the meeting during that time. And I heard him say that. And I was like,
hello?
Wait, say that again? What did you just say? Because I had never in my 29 years at that point of parenting a child with a disability heard of anybody trying to solve that problem of people being restrained for medical procedures because of their disability or because they weren't able to understand why they needed to have a blood draw or a dental cleaning or, a vaccination. So it was really hard with my oldest that we always were holding him down for blood draws. My husband had to start doing it because I wasn't strong enough, or they would call in extra people and it was awful. And so that's why it caught my attention when I heard about it in this parent caregiver meeting. And the rest is history. I signed Sam up right when it was first available. I was like, where do I sign? I'm all over this. So I just feel like it was a gift to our family that we found it. And then we've used it with our youngest, who we adopted from foster care, Luna. She's 5. So
and had you adopted Luna already when you found out about PWP? Because your story is pretty exceptional.
That's a really good question.
Sam being your oldest, and then you...
What year did you guys come to the MAC?
2022.
Yeah, we adopted Luna in 2019. She was born in 2018. Okay. So yeah, we already had...
So she was tiny. Tiny.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, she was little. And so we hadn't had a whole lot of that problem, the restraint problem with her yet. She was still really tiny. But it was a factor in deciding whether or not to adopt her because I just wasn't sure I could do it again. All the restraining, all the trauma,
Absolutely.
the yuck that we went through with Sam but we were just so in love with her at that point that we were like, well, I guess we're doing this again.
But she was somebody that needed somebody, and you stepped up for that. And that's I will give you roses for that as long as I know you, because that is I tell this story all the time about you, and that something that we see every day people struggle with. You signed up to do again.
Right. Yeah.
And I love that about you. It's
I think the joy that Sam brought to our lives outweighed the other.
He's a pretty
cool
guy.
And that's why we decided
he's a happy dude. Yeah.
We're doing this again. Because I know that's why Luna was placed with us. They told us, they said, we knew that you lived in the Down syndrome world, even though Sam was an adult. And they said, we want, she has no one else. So what do you think? And we just thought we were going to foster her, but she ended up staying forever, which has been a huge blessing for us. Because you guys know her. She's pretty awesome.
She's the best.
When you get Sam and Mark in a room together.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. 2 sides of the same coin. Oh.
Yeah. It's fun to see those friendships.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Which blossomed from Howard Mark.
It did.
Love
Absolutely.
What changes have you seen in the lives of individuals with disabilities, their families, or their caregivers, thanks to Practice Without Pressure?
A change that I saw, because I want to talk about families and how Practice Without Pressure affects families, not only the individual with a disability.
Yeah.
So I worked with a little boy on getting a blood draw who is very nervous about getting a blood draw. He's 6, and his older brother, who's just a pinch older than him, was his practice buddy. And we worked with little brother on blood draws, and older brother was the model and mom was the model. And we had, I don't know, half a dozen sessions for prepping little brother for his blood draw. And and he did it, and he did awesome. And what I didn't know was older brother had a harder time with blood draws than little brother. Little brother's the one with the disability. And being the practice, but during this whole time of practicing with little brother, I had no idea that bigger brother was more struggling with it more.
Yeah.
And mom texted me a couple days ago and said, hey, we're going in for, we got through allergy testing. You did great, talking about older brother now. Allergy testing was great. And tomorrow we're headed for a blood draw, so we're hoping good vibes or whatever. And so I said, good luck. And, this morning early, I remembered that I hadn't checked in with her. So I asked her, how did blood draw go yesterday with older brother? And she said, he did not even flinch. There were no tears. He was awesome. And she sent me a picture of him with the needle in, and you could see the blood coming out. So I could tell blood draw was in process, and he has a big grin on his face. And I said, I'm just curious, how do you think that older brother was influenced by all this practice that we did with little brother getting ready? Because he was just in the role of practice buddy. It wasn't really about him. It was about little brother getting him ready. And because I was just curious, if that helped. And because the older brothers comes across as very confident with it. I got this kind of a guy. And I just thought, well, he probably is fine with blood draws. And when I asked mom that, do you think it helped? And she said, I know it helped because he had a harder time than little brother.
When he was in the room, I remember from the story, right? He witnessed his little brother being held down.
Mm-hmm.
And that internalized it.
Emily and Ethan, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were on our previous podcast.
Yeah.
So we got to hear a lot about their story.
Okay.
And we didn't know, actually, that was a thing for Ethan's older brother.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Know that, to see that transition, even from just our last podcast,
right.
that's huge.
Right. Yeah. Because
That's
it's
huge.
happened since they were here on the podcast.
And she had said to us, she said, that he struggled as well.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it came from watching his brother get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Of course it did.
And
so he's like, this must be scary,
right.
because my little brother is crying and people are holding him down.
They're going to do it to me.
They're going to do it to me.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I just thought that was like my favorite thing that I wanted to talk about, how I have seen people's lives changed, because the relief as a mother, I could just feel it from her, knowing that that's one thing that we got now, that my boys can do blood draws, and we know what to do when something comes up and the anxiety rises, and that's where I just love that.
When we talk about, I was just having a conversation in the hall, and it was, the average person doesn't know about the restraint at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so you say, and somebody has to lay across him. I'm usually telling Mark's story when I'm explaining it. Somebody had to lay across him. And so you start by saying, this is what the child goes through.
Yep.
But then you have to say, and then that parent is having to lay across their child while the child screams.
Yeah.
So it harms the parent. And then the doctor is in there trying to take the blood or trying to do whatever it is. And they're afraid from past experiences. They've been kicked, they've been bit, they've been whatever.
Right.
And they're afraid. And then that is communicated non-verbally.
Right.
It is awful for everyone in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And so when there are these solutions, it's not just about people with disabilities. It was about Ethan's brother being able to go in there, and then he had a better time, which means it was an easier stick for the phlebotomist, right?
Yes.
And it,
So
across
true.
the board. Yeah. So it sends ripples. And I love that about this work, because it really does. It affects everybody in the room. It affects everybody in the car on the way home, and it affects everybody at the house.
Yep.
Right.
Wow.
Yes. I love it. That's a part that is just so amazing to me, is how this is not just about that person with a disability being treated gentler and kinder, but it's about the whole family. And like you say, everyone in the room, because I have had dental assistants tell me that they have experienced trauma by holding kids down, and they're screaming and they're holding them down, and they want to keep their job and everything, but they've told me it's horrible. I hate doing it. It's by far the worst part of my job. And it's like, I'm so sorry that you have to do that.
Yeah.
Here's my card.
Right. Now that you mention it.
Yeah, now that you mention it.
Looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of Power to Mark now that the initiative is gaining momentum?
Now that Power to Mark is gaining momentum and people are hearing about it, I guess that's what excites me the most, is that people are hearing about it. I have a deep passion for, now that I've heard it, I've lived it, I've benefited from it. My children have benefited from it. I am just on this relentless pursuit of letting other moms know about this, because I added it up on the drive here. I was thinking about how long I've been at this gig. And if I add Sam and Luna up together, I've been parenting a child with Down syndrome for close to 40 years. And in all that time, this is the only thing that has helped with that problem of my children not understanding how to participate in blood draw, dental work, an x-ray, an ultrasound, a CAT scan or CT scan, whatever. This is the only thing that has helped us. And we tried to come up with things on our own. We tried distracting and bribing. And I think I told Sam one time, I will literally buy you anything inside Walmart, anything you want, if you will go and do your blood draw and not have to hold you down, because I hate holding you down. And it didn't work. Yeah. It wasn't until I learned about how to build that capacity within him and within me, and have the higher expectation from the caregiver or the medical provider, that that it all fell into place. And I just have to tell other moms about it. I tell other moms in line at Target about it.
Other Becky's like you sitting there.
Advocate.
Yeah.
Because I see these young moms and it's like, oh, honey, let me help you.
Yeah.
What you don't know, that your little comfort position as a toddler that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. When your child is a teenager and adult, you are laying across them, like you said.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. And you don't want to go there. And the sooner you start it, the younger, I think, the better.
Yeah.
So that's what excites me the most, is just letting more people know about it, because I've met a few moms lately that they just don't have the support they need.
Yeah.
And it just breaks my heart. I always feel like I've had a fair amount of support, or I've, been okay. But there's a lot of moms out there that just have very little support, very little knowledge. And this, to them, the doctor tells you to do it. This is what you do. You hold your child down. They walk in the door, they see Down syndrome, or they see, whatever it is. And they're like, oh, we know what to do with you. And,
It's the
call the nurse,
assumption.
call the nurse, call the so-and-so, call the code, whatever it is that they do. And that it does not have to be that way. You don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I went with what people told me to do, which was, okay, you hold his legs, you hold the head, you hold the arm, and Sam's screaming and I'm crying, and yeah, it's awful. So to me, looking ahead, that is what by far excites me the most, is to let other moms know there is a better way.
That next Becky waiting there to hold her hand up and say, what did you say?
Exactly.
If you could offer one piece of advice to a parent or caregiver struggling with daily tasks for a loved one with disabilities, what would you share?
As a caregiver who struggles with many daily tasks with my all my kids, actually, one of the favorite things I learned going through the Power to Mark, Practice Without Pressure training, caregiver training, is about meeting people where they are. That is huge. And you'd think it would just be something that you do naturally, right? That you just, but we don't.
It feels like the right thing to do, but it's not always in practice the easiest thing to do.
Exactly. And so I have been a lot more conscientious about, okay, we're having a meltdown, or, so-and-so won't do this. Let's go meet them where they are. And it's not always about medical, dental, personal care things. It's about anything. It's about put your shoes on.
Yeah.
And what's the reason? I'm trying to figure out, okay, she won't do it. There's a reason why she won't do it. Let's go meet her where she is. Do I need to go sit on the floor next to her, or is her hair bugging her, or whatever? And that has been a huge thing for me.
Yeah.
And even with friends, even in adult relationships, to meet people where they are instead of where you think they should be, or assuming that they're over here and they're really over here, that's one of my favorite parts.
What has been the most surprising or unexpected impact of Practice Without Pressure in the past year?
I think the most surprising or unexpected impact that PWP has had on our family in the last year is how it has helped in other areas. Like we were just talking about meeting people where they are. But I tend to use a lot of the approaches, the leadership, the connection, things that I learned in the caregiver training to other parts of parenting that I use with my adult children that has been unexpected. And it's funny because sometimes we'll go, you just PWP'd that.
I love that that's become a phrase in your household. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Or don't PWP me. I don't know if that's a bad thing to say, but
It's funny.
But yeah, even my adult kids who don't have a disability I think they recognize like a change in my parenting, that high expectations and,
Taking a step back and going through it. How do you eat an elephant, right? That's like whenever you're sitting there and
Exactly.
something is overwhelming,
Right.
one bite at a time,
Right.
right? And it's having that patience, taking that step back, it goes a long way.
Yeah. And telling them, this is what you can do right now. It's okay to not, I have two adult kids in a lot of transition and I love that. Just take it a little bit at a time.
At
And
the end of the
sometimes
day-
if you need to take a break,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. It's okay.
At the end of the day, it's one of those things where we talk primarily about people with disabilities, but so it's something that the philosophies, the methods, the process, it can be applied across anyone.
Yeah.
People, any species responds to stressful situations in the exact way, whether they're human or not, whether they have a disability or not.
Mm-hmm.
The basics of the methodology and the process are applicable, like you said, literally everywhere. It was Ethan, but it was Ethan's older brother too.
Mm-hmm.
It's your kids with disabilities, but it's also your other children as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is something that can be truly impactful across the scope of your whole life.
Right.
Can you share a specific moment or story that exemplifies how Practice Without Pressure has transformed someone's life?
I feel it so deeply in my own family that it's hard for me to relate to how it's affected somebody else's family. But I've worked with a few little ones with dental care, and talked to many, many moms at conferences about the struggles of just brushing teeth. And
I would love to hear a story about that mom that you cried with at that conference.
the one that we were at together,
Mm-hmm. That would
was
be
it about toothbrushing?
Mm-hmm.
You have a better memory than
Yep.
I do. Yeah. So moms often cry at my booth. So I always have tissues because no one's ever talked about this. This is like the dirty little secret that people don't talk about. Like you say, people don't realize. People who don't have a child with a disability who has had to be restrained, they have no idea it's even a thing.
Right.
My own, and as a mom, I didn't share that I did that because I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I don't know, all of those
Yeah,
things.
nobody wants to raise their hand and say, I harm my child. I
Right.
hold like that's, it's everything we're stigmatically taught to
Not
lie, or hide. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, oftentimes we've experienced moms coming to our booth and just, you can almost see them go like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you. Like somebody is saying this out loud, that this is wrong, that this is a problem that needs to be solved. And it ends in tears a lot of times. I don't even remember that specific one because it's happened so many times that moms will say, and often it's toothbrushing, toddler age,
Younger kids, yeah.
and just to give them a few pointers right there in the booth. Sometimes I'll do that, but for them to understand that there is a solution out there for this problem. And I tell them, again, these sweet moms, these sweet young moms, I just love them and I want to hug them and I want to say, just trust me. Just check into this because you don't know what's coming when your child gets bigger and older and fights back, or, they have a mouth full of cavities because you haven't been able to take care of their teeth.
Yep.
And
then
that leads to other things in there.
leads
Yeah.
to you laying on top of them at the dentist or them being sedated a gajillion times, which is not good for you. And so just take that step to that leap of faith to just take the course or listen to, the podcast or whatever, to realize that, standing behind your kid with, like what do you call that? Half Nilsson or I don't know what you call that.
I don't know what I can't. Headlock.
Headlock. Thank you. Okay. I'm like, I got a bunch of kids. I should have known that too. Headlocks happen often at my house. No, but that is not what it has to be.
Right.
You do not have to headlock your child to brush their teeth. You just have to meet them where they are and move them forward a little
I like
bit.
that. Headlocks happen often at my house, medically and recreationally.
Mostly recreationally these days.
Thanks,
But
PWP.
headlocks have happened at the, at other places too.
Yeah.
And but it's like a burden lifted a little bit to even know. They don't even know anything about it, but just to know that there is a solution that exists to a problem that you're too embarrassed to talk about is life-changing. And so, yeah, it's one of my favorite things about talking to moms at conferences or whatever that I do. And to see them, that sparkle, like,
It doesn't have to be this way.
yeah. When you haven't even considered a world when that doesn't exist, because that was me forever. I just thought that was part of the thing. That's part of the package deal that you get when you have a kiddo with Down syndrome, is that I'm going to have to hold him down because he just cannot get it. And I didn't know how to help him get it. And now I do.
Has Practice Without Pressure changed the way medical professionals or caregivers approach their work?
Well, in my world, the medical professionals that I have worked with my kids, my being proactive about letting them know ahead of time what my expectations are as a parent. Whenever I schedule any appointments for either Sam or Luna, I make sure they know we do not restrain. And that way I know that if they're not willing to work with me there, I can just move on and find somebody else. To where I think for me, it starts with me and my high expectations for them. I'm their customer, and if they don't want to do what I want them to do, then we'll go find another dentist, which we have, So for me, just as a caregiver, that's how I see medical professionals changing, because it's going to be the moms and the dads and the caregivers demanding a change that will be the movement that takes off. Because if the customers, the parents, are not, they don't like the product, they don't like the restraint, they don't like the sedation, they're demanding better, there will be no change if there is no call for change. That's how change happens. That's how improvements happen. And it's been, and it's not always easy. I've shed many tears over having to stand up to a medical professional and they look at you like, oh, brother, you're that mom, that thinks your kid is the exception to whatever. And it's painful and it's
hurtful.
It's hurtful.
Yeah.
And you just feel talked down to, like, well, I'm the professional. I know what I'm doing. You're just the mom and just, this is what we're going to do. And it's hard. It's hard to do it. It's hard to stand up to the medical professionals. But I promise to all the moms out there listening to this, moms and dads, it gets easier. It gets easier once you have that confidence to know that there are providers out there who will work with you and who will look for a different way, because we have found them. But there's those that just don't want to hear it. They don't want to try, and that's okay. We'll move on. There's lots of other people out there to choose from.
What would you say to someone who is considering signing up for Practice Without Pressure?
For someone who's considering signing up for PWP, I'm going to say choose your hard.
Choose your hard.
Choose your hard. Because going through PWP, it's not like this cakewalk. It's not super easy. It's not like this thing that you just watch and take a quiz and check a box and you get a certificate and you're just like, oh, I've done it.
It would be nice if it was, but
it would be nice. But it's, it's more of an art form than a science to me. And you have to, you need to learn what it is, and then you have to do it. And it takes time. I don't want to try to kid anybody out there to say, oh, this is some, magical thing that we blah, 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 bippity boppity, and you're good. because you are meeting your person where they are and bringing them forward. That takes time. It takes patience. And you're choosing to do that over something else. But to me, choose your hard means do it now, or choose your hard now. I feel like the hard is less now than it will be later. Like, trust me, it gets worse.
It's like, am I starting from here or am I starting from here?
Yeah. And going from somebody who's been through 30 years of trauma like my son was, from being held down for blood draws, it was a lot harder for him to overcome all that cumulative trauma to be able to do a blood draw on his own, as opposed to my little one who went through PWP at 3, I think.
She was 3.
That it was a lot easier. She didn't have all that baggage, all that trauma built up to overcome, to realize I can do this. Now it's like so yeah, choose your hard. You can do it now. Take the time, That's the most common thing I hear is, well, when am I going to do this? This is just one more thing. I got PT, I got OT, I got speech, I got therapy, I got school, I got
and soccer and everything else under the sun. Yeah,
I got to take so and so to work. Other kids, and that's what I would say is choose your hard.
That's
because
valid.
it will get harder. There won't be a magical age where all of a sudden so and so can go to the dentist and get a cavity filled without being sedated. Sometimes, sure, it might work. But for the most part, it just gets worse.
Life's never going to be convenient enough.
Right.
It's one of those things that you have to actively choose.
Yeah.
I realize this is going to be hard. I realize this is going to take a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's a conscious choice that you have to make with this.
Right. And I've had that hard conversation with several moms that have just said, well, when am I going to do it? And it's like, well, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Or it gets worse.
Yeah.
So you got to look at your life and figure out, is this holding down thing, this restraint thing, this awful trauma thing, this damaging our relationship thing that's going on with the restraint, is it worth 30 minutes of your time every day, or 3 times a week? It's not like this is hours long practice. My sessions with Luna last maybe 2.5 minutes, So that's what I would say is
Great.
choose your hard.
What do you think is the biggest challenge facing people with disabilities going into 2025?
A big challenge that I see headed our way, or that we're in the thick of right now, is the buy-in from the medical professionals and moms or dads, caregivers. I'm not saying that everyone just jumps on board with this right away, but that is a huge obstacle, is finding the providers who are willing to take a little bit of extra time, take a deep breath with us and have higher expectations of our kids. Because you're right. I do work in this world where we're all in it. We already, we love it. We love the Kool-Aid.
We've seen the light.
We have seen the light, and we are basking in it because it is a better place to be.
It's easier when you're on the other side.
But then you go into a doctor's office and you tell them what you want or what your expectation is. And if they, have not only not seen the light, but don't even know there's a light switch.
There's one right way.
That's one right way. Yep, it's one right way. And that overcoming that hurdle is hard, and I feel like I'm one of those moms that is just paying the price for the ones who come after me, because I'm letting doctors know, that's not okay. We are not doing that. And if you insist on that, we're out of here.
Yeah.
And
you may not restrain my child if you want me to come here.
Yep. And I've had dentists say, you leave the room, you go cry in the waiting room, we'll do our job, and then we'll be done. And he was shocked when I said, no, bye. And that is a huge hurdle, the buy-in.
For a lot of providers, I do feel like it is partially a sticking point of pride. Medical providers, especially, they've worked hard to get to where they're at. They've spent hours and dedicated a lot of time and effort into their education. Yeah. And to be told
top of my class
that to be told that what they're doing is wrong.
Absolutely.
Essentially, that is something
I get
that you have to reckon with.
I get that.
Absolutely,
And that's why I try to be very careful.
Mhm.
I try to tread lightly. I'm not going in there with my guns blazing.
And we always respect the part of a big part of Practice Without Pressure and Power to Mark in our philosophy is respecting the fact that the professional is still the expert in terms of the medical. I'm not going to tell you how to clean teeth in terms of.
Sure.
I'm just going to tell you how to make your job easier and better in the
Right.
long run, right? And so it's about a cooperative partnership.
Right.
And so a lot of people that's something that after they've had an idea and seen what it can look like, they're a lot more open to it.
Right.
But that initial reaction is, oh, this is new. It's not what I'm used to. It's also not what I've been educated on.
Right. Right. Yep. So that is a huge challenge. And I just hope it gets better. Think about the ways that a lot of things used to be for people with disabilities in ways that they have improved and laws that have been passed. I just see this as a next step, towards
Absolutely.
seeing our people, really our most vulnerable people who need us the most have been shuffled, to the side a little bit. And it's time to bring them out and shine the light on them and say, these are valuable people. These are people worth the effort to help them participate in care without it being, I can't even imagine someone holding me down and doing something against my will, like in a medical office, right? You feel like you're going to the doctor, and sure, a lot of people have had trauma and a lot of people have had bad things happen to them, but I've never gone to the doctor and had someone strap me to a table and do something to me while I was screaming that I didn't want it done. And that is the reality of what's happening all over the world that we are trying to change.
How do you see Practice Without Pressure helping to create a paradigm shift in how care is provided to individuals with disabilities?
I see Practice Without Pressure really as like a tipping point, of change, that we have come to the place where enough of us have said enough's enough, and we're just not going to accept, papoosing our toddlers down and having 5 people hold an adult down with a disability who doesn't know what's going on. That to me, Practice Without Pressure is like a tipping point of the paradigm shift that I could just feel, and I feel like of the I'm of an older generation of moms raising kids, but I feel like these young moms that I meet at these conferences, I'm like, you're here right now with your kiddo for a reason. You have what it takes as a generation, to put your foot down and say, we're done with that. We're going to call it what it is. We're going to call it abuse. We're going to call it trauma. We're going to call it yuck. And we're done with that. You're not going to do that to my child. So what are we going to do? And these moms are, they're smart and they're passionate and they see the value so much in their child, that you cannot just love that child so much and then be okay with somebody,
Especially being a party
jabbing
to
them.
it yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is awful. Yes, that is awful. And so I am excited. I after a conference, I always reflect on, the hundreds of moms I've probably talked to, or dozens maybe sometimes, but it's like, you can tell it's like, you're going to get this. And next time you do whatever, now that the seed has been planted, that there is a different way. This is the right generation of upcoming mamas, I feel like, that are going to just nourish that seed and make sure that this movement, this better, kinder, gentler, more loving way of handling our medical appointments, they're going to make it happen. I have a lot of faith in them.
If someone asked you to summarize the mission and impact of Practice Without Pressure in just 1 or 2 sentences, what would you say?
So to describe Practice Without Pressure in 1 or 2 sentences, for me personally, as a mom, and it probably sounds really cheesy and people are going to roll their eyes, but honestly, for us, it has been life-changing. It really has. It has opened our eyes to just things that we didn't think were possible. And so for me, life-changing. And I think if I could wrap up the whole Power to Mark, Practice Without Pressure, the whole thing is, to me, it's love. Because you are taking the time to work with your person. And it's just about love. You do it because you love them. And you don't want that for them. You don't want that horrible experience for them. And it's just love for me.
There's a moment with the we were filming at the park for the PWP launch video, and I just wanted footage of you guys together, and it's Sam in the swing when he leans back and his smile. And then we get your brother to Dave and Buster's, and he's just in like the contrast between the two. Sam was just this, and his smile wrapped around his head twice.
Yeah.
Aww.
Okay.
Yeah, sweet.
And then he gives you a kiss, and it's this perfect little moment. And
Oh no.
but I love that these changes have allowed him to be that person that could love so much and smile so much and not be scared, and remove that fear.
Right.
Right. Where your brother puts the fear into Godzilla when he's playing the games. But talk about two very contrasting. But he was so, and he's so proud of it. He knows he's an advocate for this stuff.
Yes.
Absolutely.
He does.
And you can just see he glows.
And the difference in the amount of trust that he has for his parents.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I know, in my own experiences, Mark has a lot of trust for me as his youngest sister, but, navigating the world as somebody with disabilities, trust can come easily sometimes, but it can also be broken really easily.
Yes.
And so being able to build that back up together, I mean, I see just from an outsider's perspective, the amount of impact that it's had on y'all's relationship as a family and his confidence in not only himself, but in his relationships with other people.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that that's something that Luna will get to experience as she grows up as well.
Right.
I mean, she's only a toddler still, but she's going to get that opportunity to be able to trust freely.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing. That's love.
Yeah.
She'll
That's what
never
that is.
know.
Yeah.
She'll never know.
What a gift.
Thank goodness she will never know.
She will never know.